Welcome in to 247 Sports Live. I'm Emily Proud, and it's another NFL Draft themed show as we count down to Detroit. Exactly 4 weeks until the first round kicks off. And today we're doing a mock draft of the top 10 picks. And to help us do so, let's welcome in some guests. 247 Sports college football analyst, former NFL prospect, and front office member, Smoke Dixon, and CBS Sports NFL Draft analyst, Chris Trapasso. They will be doing the drafting. I'll be playing the role of Roger Goodell, but please do not boo me. So let's get it rolling with the number one pick, guys. That belongs to Chris and the Chicago Bears by way of the Carolina Panthers. Chris, what's the pick?
So for as much fun as it would be to throw kind of a curveball to start, the Chicago Bears, with the number one overall pick, are picking Caleb Williams, quarterback, USC. And for me, it's not a slam dunk that he's the number one overall prospect. I think he and Drake May are pretty close. But the pinpoint accuracy from inside the pocket, yes, I will say the Patrick Mahomes type improvisation ability, everything that he can do outside of structure and within the structure of the play. I don't know if it's a no-brainer, but I think this is the Bears, a team that certainly needs the quarterback position to be addressed, goes with the best player in this class at the game's most valuable position with Caleb Williams at number one.
Chris, I couldn't go with you more than that. I think he is the best player in the draft. But something's not feeling quite right with this pick because there's no reason for this guy wanting to be in Chicago. And he's showing the Chicago Bears that he doesn't want to be there. For one, not even going out there on a visit, slap in the face. And then when you look at it, I got three reasons why I think the Williams family is trying to work their way out of it, a la Eli Manning his way out. And when you have an organization, three things got to tie in: ownership, general manager, which is front office, and head coach. Well, the head coach might be out. General manager is kind of shaky from his decision making. Ownership is wavering a little bit as well too. Historically, Chicago is not a city where you want to go and throw the ball in January and December because it's tough. It's right there on the lake. Other than Cleveland, Chicago is probably the hardest place to throw. Third, that fan base is really tough. And the fact that they feel real comfortable with Justin Fields being there now, he's traded. Caleb's now going to be like public enemy number one, and he should be the guy, QB1. So I can see them working their route. And again, the Williams family is using silence as power and not being so loud so everybody knows what the play is. But I can feel a little rumbling of that.
I think that's really interesting because I think at this point, I mean, I kind of fell victim to it that we've all kind of written this pick in pen or in Sharpie that this is going to be a no-brainer. The draft doesn't start until at least pick 2. But I think a lot of the points that Smoke brought up make sense. I like the signing of Keenan Allen, but how much long-term viability does Keenan Allen have? Probably not a lot. And I think beyond that, there will be a lot of pressure. And I think if you're the Bears, you see the Commanders at number 2, and we'll get to Smoke's pick in a second at number 2. If you could move back one pick and you still like Jaden Daniels quite a bit, and you could get maybe Washington's next year first and a second round selection and still land maybe Jaden Daniels or Drake May, I think you have to consider that. So it's good that Smoke is bringing that up because I think that is somewhat of a possibility with the first pick.
You're right, Smoke. It seemed like there was, to use a pun, a lot of smoke around the potential for Caleb Williams to pull an Eli Manning. As you said, that's a discussion that we'll have a little bit later on in the show with a different instance. But since then, it's been kind of quiet, and so I think that you're keeping a close eye on if that could potentially pop up as we get a little bit closer to draft time. Let's go to the second pick. Smoke, this is your pick on behalf of the Washington Commanders. Who you got?
Well, Commissioner Proud, I'm proud to say the Washington Commanders will be taking Jaden Daniels, quarterback LSU. This guy right here fits all of the three phases the quarterback needs to fit right now in the NFL. Can work on script, make time and accuracy passes with touch, work off script when the pocket breaks down with pocket toughness, and then that when the game needs someone to make that spectacular explosive run, you can get creative with him too, and he can go ahead and score a la Lamar Jackson. Not quite Michael Vick, but he has that in him.
And for me, I'm really interested to see if Jaden Daniels or how he works with Cliff Kingsbury, who just got done as the offensive coordinator for Caleb Williams in USC. It's going to be kind of an air raid system. They're going to want to throw the football all over the lot. They bring in a very respected and well-liked head coach in Dan Quinn. Added a lot of pieces in free agency as well. I don't want to put the cart before the horse and say be CJ Stroud 2.0, but last year we were looking at the Texans team as a team nowhere close to the playoffs. You get the right quarterback, pair him with some decent veterans, and maybe hit on a few other picks throughout the draft, you can go from number 2 overall pick to the playoffs. And I think Jaden Daniels has that ability. I'm only a little bit concerned about his propensity to take some big hits when he does leave the pocket. He's certainly fast. He's going to run away from NFL defenders, but it's sometimes his spatial awareness. I think he just has to be a little bit better not taking those big shots at 6'3" and 210 pounds.
All right, so 2 quarterbacks are off the board. As much as we were trying to galaxy brain this to see if there could be potential movement and shockers on draft day, I do think those pretty much a foregone conclusion as of where we are right now. So let's go ahead and just move on to the 3rd pick. And Chris, this is yours. You were drafting for the New England Patriots. And what's the pick?
It's going to be Drake May, quarterback from North Carolina. He is my number 2 quarterback in this class, and this is not what I would do. I think the Patriots, Gerard Mayo, Elliott Wolf there, kind of the de facto GM in New England, they realize that they're not ready to compete in what has become such a loaded AFC, but you need your quarterback, and this is the class to do it. You're picking 3rd overall. It's not a spot where this organization has been really ever in the last 20 years. This is the quarterback to pick. He checks a lot of the prototypical boxes that Jaden Daniels and maybe Caleb Williams don't, that he's 6'4", over 220 pounds, but can do a lot of the same things that Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams do. Winning off script, like Smoke said, is so important. You can even use him in the designed run game a bit. Maybe not quite as accurate as the other 2 quarterbacks, but I think this would be a great selection for New England, a guy that has maybe a little bit of development, but I think this Patriots team is a year or 2 away from really competing in the AFC.
Perfect spot for a quarterback with his skill set. The only questions I have is there's some courage throws that I would like for him to make and stay stronger in the pocket. And he has some questions that he has to answer about some inaccurate dirt balls that he throws. But the Patriots need a quarterback. And if they're close with the other 3 that's available, I think that's a solid pick.
Chris, I've got to ask you, released your updated big board yesterday, and something that you mentioned really stood out. You did say that you have Drake May as your number 2 quarterback, but that it was actually really close when you were looking at Drake May and Caleb Williams, saying that your evaluation, it's not that close when it comes to the grades that you give them. So how close is it between your number 1 quarterback in Caleb Williams and number 2 in Drake May, even though he is being drafted 3rd in this?
Sure. It's really close in my estimation, and maybe Smoke has a different opinion. I think the big time throws that we saw from Drake May were more frequent than Caleb Williams. Yes, there are some inaccurate throws. We saw it at his pro day earlier today that he'll miss one 5 feet over an out route's head at times, but then he'll follow that up with like 3 of the best throws that you see on a drive that will lead a touchdown. And I like that he stayed at North Carolina, didn't transfer, didn't take NIL money for a bigger school, lost Josh Downs last season to the draft, a really productive NFL caliber wide receiver, and still was really good. He fits the mold of the quarterback that in crunch time, I'm going to count on Drake May to elude a defender and make that drop a dime throw deep down the field.
All that upside when it comes to Drake May. He was absolutely exciting to watch in college football this past season. Let's go to the 4th overall pick. Smoke, you are drafting on behalf of the Arizona Cardinals. What are you doing with the 4th overall pick?
Well, Commissioner Proud, my phone just started blowing up. I just took a look at it, and someone's calling me for a trade. This is when the draft really starts.
Yes.
The Minnesota Vikings just called up, and I've made the trade with the Minnesota Vikings. And the Minnesota Vikings are taking J.J. McCarthy, quarterback Michigan. I mean, they need one with this offense that they have. Sam Darnold is there, perceivably as a starting quarterback now. He's an older guy that can be the mentor to JJ. JJ doesn't have to come in, no pressure, nothing on him. He has to come in, learn the system, understand how to play quarterback, and in a year or 2, be the guy in Minnesota.
And how about this landing spot for any of the quarterbacks? Like the Vikings start this mock draft at 11, and that's what they have in the real draft, 11 and 23, after making that trade to get that extra pick. I think the Vikings have the best scenario for any quarterback in this entire first round. So you're JJ McCarthy, and like Smoke said, you're maybe not thrust onto the field in week one because of the presence of Sam Darnold. But once you do take the reins, and usually rookie quarterbacks aren't sitting too long anymore, you're throwing to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson. The offensive line has been solidified lately. There is some thought that maybe JJ McCarthy isn't ready to be like that focal point because he wasn't at Michigan. But man, it would be such a luxurious situation for him to fall into with Kevin O'Connell and Josh McCown and all those weapons in Minnesota.
Usually when you're drafted pretty high, especially as a quarterback, you're not entering into a good situation. But as you laid out, it seems like a pretty good situation in Minnesota if they end up trading for that pick and for JJ McCarthy. Chris, I'm curious from an NFL standpoint, though, if we have quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, and 4, what's the trickle down effect? Are there any teams, quarterback needy teams, that are potentially panicking at that point?
Yeah, Smoke and I talked about this earlier. I think the Denver Broncos would be kind of in a situation where are they just going to stay put at 12? And their GM, George Payton, that kind of was the GM that orchestrated that disastrous Russell Wilson trade. Although he's only entering year 2 with Sean Payton, it's year 3 for him. And I think if the Broncos don't make a considerable stride forward, George Payton, who was in Minnesota before this, might be looking for a job next year. So I think they're another team, just like the Giants, just like the Raiders, that are really desperate for a quarterback. And if they see the Vikings that have more ammo trade up in front of them, and suddenly they're waiting on Bo Nix or Michael Penix, they're kind of in a panic mode. And while beyond that, I think there are teams that would love the wide receivers to fall, the offensive tackles. There would be a big ripple effect if this is how it goes with quarterbacks with the first 4 picks. I think there's a good possibility that it happens.
Yeah, as you said, the Vikings have a lot of ammo in that first round with 2 first-round picks in the top 24 of the draft. We'll see if they use it to get great players or if they use it to trade up and get their quarterback of the future. Let's move on to the number 5 pick, the Los Angeles Chargers. A lot of question marks on what Harbaugh will do in his first season back in the NFL. But Chris, you are drafting on behalf of them. Who are you picking?
The Chargers are picking Tal Fuanga, offensive tackle from Oregon State. And Jim Harbaugh loves offensive linemen like Smoke loves Alabama prospects. Like, name an Alabama guy, Smoke's going to love them. Show Jim Harbaugh a mauling right tackle who's athletic and big with length, everything that you would want out of that kind of traditional, stronger right tackle side, the strong side of a lot of the formations there. And he's going to pick him. He talked about it at the owners' meetings. And I don't think that was gamesmanship. I think he was really saying, look, you need to build your team around the offensive line. They have a GM who was with the Baltimore Ravens under Eric DeCosta. I think this is kind of a slam dunk pick. They have Rashawn Slater at left tackle, who's very good when healthy, but the right side has kind of been an abomination in front of Justin Herbert, and they can pick a wide receiver later in this class.
Phenomenal pick. We all know how Harbaugh wants to play football. He wants to play dirty, muddy, but he also has to understand that he got a quarterback out that he's also going to protect by running the football, play action passes. He doesn't have to get hit that often. So great pick. Love what he brings to it. This is a Harbaugh type of guy. Outstanding. You did some scouting on that one, man. Hats off.
As it pertains to your scouting, though, Chris, I got to ask real quick with the offensive tackle position. Olufushanu I've seen go above him. I've also seen Joe Alt in the mix. So what is it about Fuanga that has him as the first tackle off the board for you? Yeah,
I actually have Olufushanu myself as the offensive tackle 1 in this class. I didn't see him regress a lot, but in talking to people around the league, and I'm sure Smoke has as well, there is some thought that he might not have the nastiness that you want out of that, first offensive tackle off the board. And 2023 wasn't quite as good as 2022 when he really broke out at Penn State. With Fuanga, you do get that nastiness. You get the mean streak, and you think, okay, he's just a great run blocker. But I thought in pass protection, protecting DJ Uiagalelei last season, Fuanga showed his mobility at like 6'5", 335 that made it look like he was a top 10 pick. He kind of just fits what teams in general want in the top 10, picking an offensive tackle. And like Smoke said, seems like a classic Jim Harbaugh type of player and just a Jim Harbaugh type of philosophy in the draft.
Absolutely. Let's move on to the 6th pick. Smoke, that is you with the New York Giants. Who are you picking?
New York Football Giants. They hunkered down with the quarterback last year, the guy that they're giving $40 million to. So now they got to get him some help. And we know we have Marvin Harrison sitting right there on the board, junior, but also you have Malik Neighbors. And working with Joe Shane and Brian Daboll, they like going with guys that check the boxes. Yesterday, Neighbors came out, ran a 4.35, 42-inch vertical. Everything says take this guy. So they're going to run up there, turn the pick in because he's a height, weight, and speed guy that can play football as well, too, in New York, and give that quarterback something to throw the ball to. And they're going with Malik Neighbors, LSU.
So I don't have much faith in Daniel Jones, but like you're saying, they're tied to him because of that contract. Malik Neighbors is my number one wide receiver in this class. I am the world's biggest yards after the catch proponent. You watch the Super Bowl, you watch the Chiefs and the 49ers. They can create yards after the catch better than any two organizations in football. They've been really successful. To me, the biggest difference between Neighbors and Harrison Jr., and certainly there's some areas in which Harrison's better, I think Neighbors is more electric after the catch. Bouncing off tacklers, accelerating. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is really fast too, and he's a little bigger. But that is what the Giants need. And what Smoke said, when you have Daniel Jones there, you don't have a lot behind him. You can't get the quarterback. You can't move up. Malik Neighbors can change kind of the course of the career for Daniel Jones because he's that explosive with the ball in his hands.
Okay, so Malik Neighbors is the first wide receiver off the board in this 247 Sports live mock draft. But Chris, you are drafting for another team who could potentially be in the market for a wide receiver, and that is the Titans at number 7. Where are you going here?
All right, this might seem like it's galaxy brain, like you mentioned earlier, Emily, but the Tennessee Titans, they need offensive tackle. It is an absolutely stacked offensive tackle group. I think it's as good as the wide receiver class. Their GM, Rand Carthon, would be sitting here saying, oh, Marvin Harrison Jr. still on the board at 7? It would be like a run the pick to the podium type or call it in instantly. They're going Marvin Harrison Jr., wide receiver, Ohio State. They bring in Calvin Ridley. They have DeAndre Hopkins. But then you give Will Levis, Marvin Harrison Jr. to kind of be that long-term number one. For as much as they would love offensive tackle, I think Harrison Jr. is just too good to pass up on here.
This Marvin Harrison Jr. was number one on a lot of people's boards. But I think they have to fix that offensive line. And there's a guy in Notre Dame sitting right there and say, why not me? Why do you have to go to a receiver to score points when you've won in Tennessee by running the ball, being tough, up front, knocking guys off the ball, and that's how you win with Rand Carthon's philosophy. That's an old running back, one of my good friends in the scouting game. I know that he wants to win that line of scrimmage. But like you said, Marvin Harrison is sitting there pretty, and you have to give someone Will Levis to throw the ball to. Nuke is getting up in age. Calvin is that number one type guy, but when you bring in a young guy like that, it can help. But it'll be tough not to go with an offensive lineman. But like I said, one of the best receivers that I've scouted, and he was number one on my board, even though he didn't run, didn't jump, do anything. You cut the film on, he's that guy.
Well, this is a perfect segue from what Emily asked me earlier about Olu Fashanu and other tackles in this class. If this is how the board plays out and Marvin Harrison Jr. is there at 7, I think this is where we could see the Tennessee Titans getting a bunch of phone calls for maybe the Saints, the Jets potentially, any other. And there's always a mystery team or two later in the first round that would be like, we want Marvin Harrison Jr. Titans knowing, hey, Joe Alt is still there. Fashanu's still there. J.C. Latham from Alabama is still there. Amarius Mims, who's a big mauler, very athletic and explosive, huge guy at right or left tackle from Georgia. This could be where we see one of those somewhat rare, but they do happen, trade up for a non-quarterback, because I don't think anyone had Marvin Harrison sitting on the board at number 7 overall.
It's the old philosophy of, do you draft for need first or just the best player available? So I have to imagine that Carthon will be salivating a little bit if all of a sudden Marvin Harrison Jr. is there at 7, and it is a need for the Titans. You could argue that offensive tackle is a greater need, but again, it's one of those question marks that people get paid millions of dollars to make, and we will just have fun and play mock draft here on this show. But let's move on to the number 8 pick. It's the Atlanta Falcons. Smoke, you are drafting on behalf of them. Who's your pick?
Well, the Dirty Birds. I just got blamed for being a Bama guy. So I'm going to go ahead and do the favor for everybody right now. John Abraham was the last pass rusher that the Atlanta Falcons had to get the guy on the ground. We saw quarterback go 1 through 4. Got to get somebody to get to the quarterback. So the best pass rusher in this draft, Dallas, Big Sack Turner, University of Alabama, Atlanta, Dirty Bird. You don't got to go anywhere but 20 East and find your home, Dallas Turner.
Yeah, I would love this pick for the Falcons. It's an obvious need. I love how he tested at the combine. And for me, with Dallas Turner, and Smoke can maybe speak to this more than I could, but early in his career, he was the number 1 edge recruit in the country when coming out in 2021. And I didn't see it. I didn't see him have the Will Anderson type of instant impact, but that's asking a lot in the SEC, even at Alabama as a freshman. I liked that in the final season, the pass rush moves were better. The speed to power was better. And you know that he is just a freak level athlete. We saw that in Indianapolis. This would be kind of one of the best pairings for a team need and a prospect value in the entire first round.
Chris, you've poured over the tape. Is Dallas Turner worthy of the first defensive player taken in this draft?
Yeah, I have him graded inside my top 10 for all those reasons. That I in my summer scouting, I didn't see it, but he really, like, the lights came on in that final season at Alabama. Maybe he just needed to not be with Will Anderson, just kind of be that focal point of the defense. He really brings it all as a pass rusher. I think he's a better version of Nolan Smith, who went late in the first round despite the pectoral injury last year from Georgia to the Eagles. Smaller, but just so much explosion and bend around the corner.
All right. The Bears back on the podium for the 9th overall pick. Chris, who are they selecting?
To pair with Caleb Williams, they're going to go wide receiver Rome Odunze from Washington. And to kind of piece this together, what the Bears would have, they would have their underneath separator possession guy in Keenan Allen, their rugged kind of Deebo Samuel-esque yards after the catch guy in DJ Moore, and then they're just rebounder down the football field. Rome Odunze doesn't have that Xavier Worthy speed, but he plays like a great vertical threat because of how good he is catching the football above his head, that he's always open 2 feet above his head. They could go in a lot of different directions. They could go offensive tackle. If Dallas Turner was there, I think they would look at edge to pair with Montez Sweat, who they traded for last year and was really good. But this would just be, hey, we drafted Caleb Williams, and let's just disregard, even though I do think there's credence to it, that he leaves and you know, Smoke's idea that he kind of works his way out of Chicago. But if he's there, I think it's all about building as many weapons around Caleb Williams in Chicago.
Well, if you're going to go with Caleb as the number 1 pick overall, you got to make this whole party look great and get him some toys. Like you said, you have DJ, you got Keenan Allen, now you got Rome, trying to find a way to score some points and just win the draft day party, which you will do if you make this pick. But again, I think that offensive line and the way that you protect and the way that you play in that division, especially when it gets cold, and I know you have 2 indoor stadium teams, but at some point, that offensive line should be addressed. And there are a lot of receivers in this draft that can do a lot of the things that I'm not comfortable with Rome Odunze not being able to do in terms of elite ability to separate. A lot of his throws are contested jump ball catches. And then in the NFL, you can win, but we only saw 2 receivers in their lifetime, Larry Fitzgerald and Nuke Hopkins, win that way. At some point, you have to be able to put your foot in the ground, separate on intermediate routes and on now throws.
So you're saying, Smoke, it feels a little bit like a fantasy draft than addressing the team needs.
It feels like if you're drafting a quarterback first overall and you believe that he is that guy, and I believe that he is, and the best available player can help him become the best version of himself in Chicago, which, again, is a tough place to play in December and January in terms of throwing the football because they're right on that lake. Give it to Caleb so he stays in town, and I'm okay with that pick. But I later on like 9, 10, when I can move back and get other receivers that I deem as close to good as Rome is, I would listen to a lot of trade calls and see if somebody wants to come up and get in front of the next team that needs a quarterback.
All right, let's finish out the top 10 with the New York Jets. Smoke, who are they picking at number 10?
Well, they just hired a new general manager. His name is Aaron Rodgers. They just got an offensive coordinator. His name is Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron Rodgers is making this pick. Aaron Rodgers typically never gets a first-round offensive player that he can throw the ball to. And he loves tight ends. So I'm going to give him Brock Bowers, University of Georgia, the best tight end in this class. Now, everyone wants to line him up and just be a single Y, and that means an attached player to the line of scrimmage and have him block and be that slug, but he's not. He's a dynamic playmaker with the ball in his hands, can create yards after contact, and also score at any point. And when we see it right now in the NFL, that tight end position has become a sexy position that everybody wants one. You got a Travis Kelce, you had a Gronkowski before, you had a Jordan Reed before. You just have guys like that you have to get the ball to, work in the middle of the field. Aaron's getting old. You need somebody to get the ball to.
And I'll throw out one other name. He kind of reminds me of George Kittle, not quite the blocker of Kittle's caliber, but there's some knocks that I've heard about and read about during this pre-draft process that Bowers isn't really that big. It's like 6'3", 245, kind of the stock height and weight for tight ends today. George Kittle is not Rob Gronkowski size. He's not even Travis Kelce size. But I think the yards after the catch ability, the separation skill that Brock Bowers showed, even as like a freshman in the SEC, was so impressive. And what's fascinating about him, he's kind of flown under the radar during this pre-draft process. After being like the penciled in top 10 tight end during the season, he gets injured here and there at Georgia, doesn't work out at the combine. I think this is a great pick for a Jets team that is about as all in as you can be with Aaron Rodgers and Mike Williams and all those players on the defensive side. And Brock Bowers feels like he can be that Sam Laporta guy to come right in and be productive in year one.
He is an absolute weapon. So that would be a very interesting combination in New York. There you have it. The top 10 mock draft. You see it here. We got a run on quarterbacks to start in the first round, the first 4 picks. And of course, all the positions that we talk about super deep in this draft. You're seeing those wide receivers go early. Chris, before we let you go, just real quick, I feel like you do this exercise by yourself a lot for CBSSports.com. Now that you're doing it with somebody else, what surprised you about this mock?
Well, I think it's what I talked about earlier, that Marvin Harrison Jr. was still on the board. Smoke loves him. I like him a lot. I just have him slightly graded behind Malik Neighbors. And forever, up until really that LSU Pro Day, when Neighbors ran fast and jumped high like we expected him to, it was like, oh, it's going to be Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4 to the Cardinals. They're not going to move out, or a team might even trade up for him. To have him at 7, again, maybe it's not actually the Titans. Maybe another team moves up. That surprised me as we went through this exercise. But it would have to really reshuffle and have a big ripple effect on the rest of the first round if he's still there after the Giants pick at number 6.
Will certainly be interesting, and we know that you will do a few thousand more of these before draft time. You got 4 weeks. Chris, thank you so much for coming on. You can check out his coverage on CBSSports.com. And for more NFL draft talk from our friends at CBS Sports, be sure to listen to the With the First Pick podcast. They are breaking down the NFL draft throughout the offseason, but now is definitely the time to listen. Well, it is time now on this show to welcome in National College Football analyst Carl Reed. Smoke Dixon is still here with us. Guys, since we're talking NFL draft, we should probably discuss what Coach Prime said the other day about the draft future for his son, Shedeur, and for Travis Hunter. Let's take a listen.
Where do you predict Shedeur and Travis going in the draft?
Top 4.
That's pretty beautiful.
Anywhere from 1 through 4. One of them is going to be 1.
That's what I'm talking about.
One of them is going to be 1.
Speak it into existence.
And the latter one would not go behind 4. Now, all this is subjective because I know where I kind of want them to go. And let's not forget Shallow, okay? But I know where I want them to go. So there's certain cities that ain't gonna happen.
Okay, you on point.
It's gonna be it's gonna be an Eli. Yeah, we ain't doing
No, but I will say this though. Whatever cities they go to,
yeah,
you got people there.
Okay, it's going to be an Eli, which is something that we referenced earlier on in this season of potential with Caleb Williams. He did specify the cities. They're going to shock you here: Atlanta, Washington, Dallas, Baltimore, and San Francisco. Carl, my first and biggest question is, these guys are a year away from doing this process. So why is Deion saying this now?
Well, I think it's an important conversation to kind of set the table for when you have that looking at down the road, so people know what's going on. This is actually, Emily, not an unusual situation. John Elway did this coming out of college, coming out of Stanford. He refused to play for the Indianapolis Colts and threatened to play baseball and then forced a trade to the Denver Broncos. We all know what happened with Eli Manning when Archie said he's not going to play for the San Diego Chargers. Then he manipulated the situation to get him with the New York Giants. And another thing is Deion Sanders himself as a player did the same thing. He threatened Denver, Green Bay, and the Kansas City Chiefs that if they drafted him, he was going to play baseball. So this is not new. Players have a lot of leverage now, and they really always have if they've been willing to go back. And he says something very, very key in this. Shedeur and Travis both still have another year of eligibility after this football season. So that could come into play if the draft order doesn't line up in a way that they see as beneficial for their careers.
Carl, listen, we understand that one thing that Coach Prime is going to do, he's a marketing genius. He's doing the best job of selling his players. And again, not one of those players ever come out and say anything. But like you said, he's teeing this up for quarterback Shedeur to end up in Dallas, which is a fine play on his part. I'm not knocking him, but sometimes silence can be the key, and being loud can get you in trouble. And I would hate to see if they don't play up to the level that he's saying that they play up to, and now those young players are getting hurt just because of not understanding the process of just being quiet. When it gets close to it, now you can be as loud as you want to be.
Yeah, I mean, Carl, when it comes to being able to do this, it's all about leverage, right? You know, you have to be a special player to be able to pull this card, but you also have to be willing to, you know, for this to not work out and to not have anything to lose. And so I love what you said, Carl, about how they have an additional year of eligibility on top of this next season. So if they don't get drafted to where they want to go, they could just come back to college. So how much is this day and age of player empowerment and NIL and the market that they have in college, how does that maybe affect the likelihood that a player could pull off an Eli, as we like to call it?
Well, they're already making a bunch of money. You saw Travis Hunter just bought his mom a house. So from a financial standpoint, they're on really solid ground as of that. But I like to say this, Smoke. Smoke played at the University of Alabama. He played in the NFL. He's worked in the NFL. He's worked in college. People that have inside information and people that can create advantages for their children, they do it since the beginning of the time. Smoke has a son, and there's going to be certain situations that he's not going to allow his son to participate in. I have my DMs are full with parents who want their kids in the best situation. So I really don't understand the uproar about the comments that's made. We got parents who try to fix traffic tickets for their kids. We got parents right now that are sitting in teachers' classrooms trying to beg for an A because they're trying to get into certain colleges. This is not abnormal for people to use the relationships they have and who they are to put their kids in the most beneficial situation possible.
I don't think it's an uproar. I just believe that it's real early in the process of doing this. If this was a month out from the draft, I get it. But this is a year away, a season away. There's a lot of different scenarios that can play out. I get it, and I don't disagree with dad, coach, finding opportunities to help elevate his kid and one of his better players, to push them in front of general managers and execs and let them know that I don't care what order that you guys have them in, we're going to dictate where they go. I get it. But I said it again, just like the Williams camp, sometimes silence can be the key. But again, Prime is the biggest marketing agent for Deion Sanders and the University of Colorado and himself as well, too.
Well, Carl, a big reason there is uproar is because it does rub some people the wrong way, fair or not. I'm not saying it does to me at all, but Smoke, in your experience working in NFL front offices, how do teams view this kind of delicate balance between the confidence and cockiness?
Well, it's really, again, a parent, but the parent is a coach. So we like to say evaluate the tape, investigate the player. But Prime is sitting in a position where he could do that. And he's not really going to hurt either one of those young players because, again, it's the coach saying it. If it was the player saying this, now you'd sit back, okay, and say, he's too cocky. He does not understand what situation he's going to be in or why is he saying that. It's coach saying it, not player. So if coach is saying it, I'm fine with it. Just like a parent coming out and just going nuts on saying any comment that they want to say. You ignore it, evaluate the talent, investigate the player, and see where he goes.
Carl, what do you think NFL teams will think about this?
I think NFL teams are going to evaluate the tape and make the best decision for their franchises. And when they deem that those are the guys that they want, they're going to do everything they can to come to terms. And believe me, Deion Sanders has relationships with all 32 teams and all 32 front office. The teams that he's talking about know exactly who they are, and he knows exactly what he wants to do. I think this is much to do about nothing, and it's going to end up working out exactly like it was planned to.
Carl, you mentioned earlier that you have parents and your DMs, and I know that we've always talked about just how gracious you are with your time and giving advice to players. So hypothetically, if a player were to come to you and say, I want to choose where I get drafted, how would you advise them to handle that situation?
Well, it depends on how good you are, because people who are good enough in the options that you have, those are the people that have the ability to create leverage. Remember, one of the things that Deion had going for him when he played, and that John Elway had when he played, when they did it, is they had the ability to go play Major League Baseball. Eli had a lot of influence from his dad, Archie, being a Hall of Fame quarterback. Marvin Harrison, you see right now, he didn't participate in the combine, and he's doing the little things differently because his father is also a Hall of Fame player with inside information. So a lot of it depends on who are you, what value do you have, and can you really set the stage for yourself like that because of the way you can play? And it's only going to be maybe 4 to 6 players a year that even have the ability and the backing to make decisions like this.
That's what we love about you, Carl. You keep it real and you make sure that everybody is making an informed decision. One more thing, because it is March and we need things to talk about, Shedeur Sanders actually took to the podium this week and had this to say.
I came from a private school, so at the end of the day, I dealt with a lot of negativity, a lot of hate, a lot of everything I done dealt with already year after year. I came from a small private school. All the other kids was going big, Power 5, and they went to big 6A, Texas 6A schools and stuff. I don't see those same kids around. I don't see them excelling in their programs or whatever they're doing. So I've always been against the odds, like in different ways.
All right, a resident Texan and 247 Sports national college football writer, Chris Hummer, was quick to point out on Twitter the guys from Shedeur's 2021 class who have had some success. You might have heard of them: Quinn Ewers, Caden Salter, Jalen Milroe, Shamar Turner. Carl, this is a classic example of chip on the shoulder. We heard this with MJ, if you watched the documentary during the pandemic, just kind of creating the slight so you feel like you have something to prove. But if this wasn't necessarily rooted in fact, as our Chris Hummer has pointed out, Carl, what did he mean by this?
Well, number one, if you know anything about the state of Texas in high school football, you know that the private schools are looked upon in much less regard than the big public schools are. And while he was playing in high school, there was a lot of talk that he was not playing against the elite competition in the state of Texas. So I understand exactly why he feels the way he feels in comparison to how he's performed against some of those other guys. Even the list that you put up, he's on par or has outplayed most of the guys on that list. Quinn Ewers did participate in the college football playoffs, but you have to also remember that Texas won several games without him playing this year. So Shedeur has outplayed expectations and what the expectations are for him. But Texas is a very competitive state. Everybody wants to talk about the state of Texas when it comes to football. But, Shedeur, being the competitor that he is, he wanted his name amongst the elite guys, and in high school, he didn't get the same type of notoriety, and he has outplayed where he was ranked as a high school football player.
Carl, I get it. I'm a firm believer in let your play speak for itself. When you are an elite player, you don't get in conversations about how good you are. You go out there, you play, you let that take care of the rest, and you don't knock other players for who they are. You give them compliments. And then at the end of the day, you figure out where you're going. But that comment, if I was one of those guys, would have rubbed me the wrong way, because I've never talked about who you are as a player. There's no reason for you to say that I'm the best and you really haven't won many games at the Division 1A level in terms of being over 500, even bowling. So a
Well,
lot of words, not a lot of production in terms of wins, and a lot of my coach saying that I need help to play at a high level. So you have to be real careful with the words that you're using and the talent level that you have and the expectation behind your name and also the play that you put on the football field. All of those aren't adding up for me right now to do that.
Smoke, you don't have to do any of that. You don't have to watch what you say. You have to watch what you do, and you have to watch how you play. And at the end of the day, if you play football, it doesn't matter what you say if you back up what you say up. Nobody's looking at you saying, man, this guy talks too much, if you can back up the talk on the field, which he has done so far since he's been in college. That's just the truth. Some of those guys do play in better programs than he has at the point. And so you are right. They didn't win a lot of games in terms of that. But Shedeur was the bright spot. They might not have won a game at all if he hadn't played. So at the end of the day, Smoke, you come on here a lot and you say, well, guys shouldn't talk. They shouldn't say anything. They should let their game speak for themselves. Football is an entertaining game, and he said what he said.
Yeah, and we all understand who he is. It's a lot of entertainment, but if you're an average player, you need that. When you're an elite player like he thinks that he is, and I think that he is a very good player, I don't know if you need that comment in order to get your likes, your clicks, or get yourself more. He doesn't need any more motivation, Carl. You and I both know that. If you are playing at an elite level and your team is one of those high-level teams, I haven't heard Jalen Milroe say anything. Quinn Ewers haven't said anything. Those guys go out and they play. Less talk, more play. Tom Brady told them, get off the chats, get off of social media, get in the film room, get your game better, throw the ball quickly so you don't get hit. Go back in the room and just get your game better. You don't got to come out here and mess with these guys. You're better than that.
I would push back with you on how some of those guys feel in terms of that. They don't have the amount of cameras in their face every day that Shedeur does. But I would really push back on you strongly on how those other quarterbacks feel that they're being treated and some of the things that they're saying about how they feel slept on as well, or they feel disrespected in certain areas of their game. They just don't have cameras in their face every day for you to hear that. So the greatest competitors that we have ever had have always created a chip on their shoulder. They've always created a scenario where they have to perform. The very best guys have always told you that they would make things up in their mind to give them some type of competitive advantage. That's his thing, and he said it.
But like you said, Carl, in their minds, creating them within themselves, not towards their opponent. Like, to me, that's a disrespect. I don't have to knock anybody to let you know that I'm the best.
He didn't direct it at an opponent. He talked about his recruiting class as it relates. I think you're reaching a little bit here.
Again, you're questioning my arm length. It's
oh my
wrong.
goodness. It's a difference in philosophy, right? I mean, move in silence for Smoke and Carl. You can talk that talk as long as you back it up. But we appreciate both of you for talking that talk on the show today. Thank you for the great discussion. And thank you for watching. As always, make sure that you are subscribed to the 247 Sports YouTube channel for more great content like this. All my March Madness fans out there, we also have hoops content, so be sure to check it all out on the 247 Sports YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.